Hello, my name is Jada Arca, and today I will be giving a presentation on our world post-COVID, attempting to answer the question, how drastic of an impact did the COVID-19 pandemic have on the U.S. economy? This presentation is for Data 620, semester of summer 2022, instructed by Professor Carrie Beam at the University of Maryland Global Campus. So before we dive into the following graphs here, I would like to highlight that there are a multitude of factors that were affected by COVID. However, I chose to highlight aspects that were very important to myself and things I personally noticed a direct change in over the course of COVID, as well as the 10-year span covered here, which is 2011 to 2021. And figure 1 here visualizes the average price of fresh milk per gallon, a dozen of eggs, and a loaf of bread over a 10-year span of time in the US. Very commonly, all these foods deemed staple foods in most American households, therefore I wanted to highlight these changes specifically. As you can see here, the price of milk and the price of bread have shown the least amount of variance within the 10-year span, whereas the price of eggs, not so much. As we can see here indicated by the forecast, there is a greater estimation shadow for eggs, showing that the price could increase or be decreased within the next 2 years by 2023. Specifically, we have here an estimation of $1.60 for eggs, $3.36 for milk, and $1.41 for bread. Alright, moving on to figure 2, we have the price of oil by barrel. If you gather attention to the few years before COVID costs, we see that there was a high point. However, once 2019, the commencement of the widespread of COVID happened, we see a very steep drop in these prices as demand was down due to international shutdowns and efforts to contain COVID. However, following the approval for FDA vaccinations and COVID case reductions, we do see that the oil prices spikes towards the end of 2020 as the demand for oil and the return to normalcy increase. Due to so many factors contributing to oil prices, as you can see by the forecast estimation for price, it is very large. It is difficult to accurately predict based on historic trends whether the cost will grow or reduce. However, by 2023, the forecast indicates that oil by barrel should be about $53.58. Moving along to figure 3, we have a Gantt visualization depicting the hourly employment rate for education and health services. I chose to highlight these two as they were both employment sectors that were in the essential category during the COVID pandemic and previously. As you can see here, the years 2011 through 2015, we have rates for pay, and they were very similar, if not within a 50 cents variation of cost, showing stability in the pay, which is to be expected over such a short span of time. However, within the same 4 years COVID began, that impacted the US, we see a slightly higher pay rate for education and health services. This change in pay is most certainly due to the increased demand for educators, researchers, health workers, and efforts to combat the virus. Moving on to figure 4 here, we have a line graph showing the consumer total average annual expenditure in the US. As you can see indicated by the positive linear trend line, expenditure has been increasing on average over the span of the last 10 years. As indicated by the forecast, by 2023, there would be an expenditure of about $66,160 per person, indicating an estimation for a decline or a slight increase in that projection by the shadowing. If we look more closely here, 2019 to 2021, which covers the height of the pandemic, the expenditure had decreased. However, as numbers decline with COVID cases and the costs immediately increased again as the economy began to recover. Lastly, for figure 5 here, we have the correlation between milk price and oil price. I thought this was an interesting aspect to include within the presentation as to highlight how completely different consumer products can have similar trends in terms of cost during a huge economic change for the US, and it has been pretty consistent over the past 10 years. In any instance where the cost of oil is reduced, we see by the line graph, which is orange, a clear indication that the cost of milk also reduced. This is most certainly due to the cheaper production of milk products, considering many factories and agricultural entities would have seen a break in their costs and shifted some of that break over to the consumer. As indicated by the forecast here, we do have an estimation that within the next 2 years, the cost of milk would be around $3.36, and hopefully the barrels of oil between $57 and $58 per barrel. I hope this presentation was very informative in providing insight into how COVID impacted the US economy. Thank you so much for your time, and here are my references.